Hi, this is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Wherever you find us, whether it's a video on YouTube or on your favorite podcast platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms where I give you a heads up about upcoming shows and which date and time they will be aired. If you go to MiamiGhostChronicles.com, you can find links to the shows, MP3 files which you can download, or links to your favorite platform like iTunes, Spreaker, SoundCloud, and all other major sources. You can find information for upcoming and past talk show appearances as well as new book projects at MarlenePardo.com. You can also purchase books and merchandise there, and you can visit my author page on Amazon at Marlene Pardo Pellicer. Due to popular demand, I'm narrating my True Believer stories that I've collected throughout the years in a new series called Supernatural Storytime. You can find links at supernaturalstorytime.com. If you are into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate some of those at Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If you would like to read noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird, you can visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at MiamiGhostChronicles.com. I do want to thank you all for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi everybody, this is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, Stories of the Supernatural. How is everybody doing? Good, I hope. I know you guys are going to be hearing this in a little bit, so I'm going to get ahead of the curve and wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. It's November. Everybody's, what I call the home stretch of the year. Like, before you know it, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, and it's going to be 2020. 2020. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I was thinking, I remember when the year 2000 was going to come up, and everybody was worried that there was going to be a collapse because computers didn't know how to handle the year 2000. And I remember, and of course, all the crazy movies that came out, doomsday kind of movies. But back then, believe it or not, there was a lot of rumors running around that the economies were going to fail because all these computers that ran banking and all these other structures, or within companies everywhere, just wouldn't know how to handle it. They wouldn't know how to tick over, and believe it or not, this was not like a weird fringe thing. There was a solid belief, or like a be careful because you never know. And now I want to say it's 20 years later. It's like, what happened? 20 years have gone by since that moment. And as a matter of fact, and then in, 2016, we had the end of the Date of the Mind calendar, I believe, which was supposed to be also apocalyptic. Nothing happened. So, and here we are. But anyway, let's get to the good stuff. I am very happy, very pleased to bring back a guest which you all thought was great, and which I think is great. And this is a gentleman by the name of Allan Pacheco. Now, Allan, he's a native of Santa Fe, New Mexico, and he's worn many hats. He's a renowned paranormal investigator. He's a journalist, a lecturer, a screenwriter, and a SAG-AFTRA actor, and an inventor of auto tools. Now, he has a love for baffling yarns, and his experience has led him to write about odd historical events and the metaphysical. And he has several books, and as a matter of fact, he also has a tour company that provides tours, which I believe is for either the last 30 or 35 years in Santa Fe. If you go to his website, which I visited, you will see so many wonderful testimonials about his tours, about pictures, the ghost tours of, weird, that aha picture everybody wants to capture when they go on ghost tours. I mean, just to go on that website alone convinces you that he provides such a great tour, and so many people find enjoyable. But anyway, let's get to the good stuff. Let me bring him on. How are you doing today, Allan?
Hello, Marlene. I'm doing fine, and thank you for such a nice introduction. And first of all, let me just say to everybody on out there, wishing everybody a upcoming wonderful Thanksgiving holiday,
Yes.
and everybody drive safe. And I'm doing wonderful, Marlene, and I'm glad to be back on your show. I really enjoyed the last time here. Your questions were razor sharp. Your input was
Oh,
was terrific. You're a fantastic host.
thank you. Thank you so much. And no, on the contrary, I looked forward to having you back as a guest because you definitely, and I tried to get him to do his own bio introduction because he's done so many things um, in interesting fields. I mean, besides what we were talking about, the tours as far as paranormal investigations and all these different areas, because Alan, like me, doesn't just consider the paranormal strictly ghost. Paranormal falls under the umbrella of cryptids, UFOs. I mean, that there's a lot of fields that fall under that paranormal thing. But anyway, um, I know that I'm going to let you out because I could go in so many directions with you. First of all, let me ask you, has anything happened interesting on any of your tours recently? Which I know you've been doing them for several years. I know the last time, you know, I mean, you yourself, I remember you mentioned that your family has deep roots there in Santa Fe, right?
Right, right. Yeah, I'm my pedigree, as you would say, and this can be how to say documented with DNA evidence. It's not
Right.
going to be like the phony stuff of Senator Warren. Yeah, well, that really steams me. No,
Yeah.
I'm roughly three-fourths Spaniard,
Okay.
and that side of the family's been here since the 1500s. And on the
Mm-hmm.
other side, I'm an American Indian, and they've been here since time immemorial.
Exactly.
And with these two lineages here in Santa Fe, I'm going to. I mean, when you go on my tours, you're going to get the skinny, no propaganda. In other words, you're going to get
Right.
stories that been passed on there. And as far as American Indian, there's going to be, where we come from, etc. On over here. That looks like it's going to be Apache. And again, you say, well, which one are you going to be? Well, Chiricahua,
Chiricahua. Okay.
not Jicarilla, not Mescalero. Yeah,
That's who.
I mean, there's,
That's
you could say,
the
well,
tribe that
are you
Cochise
from the
came from.
UK? Are you
Is that correct?
exactly? Yeah, Mangas Colorado,
Mm-hmm.
Geronimo or Geronimo. Yes, yes,
Yes.
and yeah. So when people say, well, I'm from the UK. Well, are you from Ireland, Scotland? We'll just say UK,
Right.
but you've got a little bit more input on me. So I mean, information on me. So yeah, on my tours, I do ghost tours, history tours. Of course, these are private tours. So if you have a ghost app, a ghostometer, bring it along. I do them during the day and at
Mm-hmm.
night, and I try to tack the tour towards the person's interest. In other words, on these tours, there's not going to be any obnoxious strangers. It's your private tour by yourself or with your group, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And we traipse through Santa Fe. And yes, odd things have happened on my tours and on an investigation since last time we talked. And Santa Fe or this area,
Mm-hmm.
for many, many reasons, is a vortex for paranormal, for odd history. For example, here during World War II, this is where history changed as far as the world goes. This is where Soviet spies were able to pick Uncle Sam's pockets clean with the secrets of the A-bomb. So this is hallowed
Wow.
ground for the KGB. Yeah, and of course with the other things that have happened here as far as ghosts here, you have things that are just, that even Rod Serling would not have been able to invent.
Well, and this is the thing. I mean, when you mentioned that area, I mean, they have a lot of, from what I understand, a lot of areas like with the Cocopelli and the glyphs and all these drawings and some of these ancient caves are found in that
Yes,
area, right? I mean,
right,
this has a very long history. That area where Santa Fe is situated in.
right, right.
And then, of course, historically, like you said, when the Spaniards came in and, in more modern times. But there's a very, very deep history there, and I guess that maybe because everybody sometimes thinks of paranormal or ghost as more modern, whether it's gold miners or something like that, and people sometimes forget that these areas, there was a lot going on in the land even before then.
Exactly. And this is one of these, for example, people say, well, Santa Fe, well, it's at the crossroads with all these trails coming on in to this area, and that's what made Santa Fe with all the very best, the very worst. Come to, you want to go, pre-Columbian, and you want to say, well, Santa Fe, well, for example, we have this phenomena, and there's these, we're on the, we're a mile high in elevation. Even though high desert, we got pinon trees and rattlesnakes here. We have also, on the dorsal fin of the Rocky Mountains, so we get snow. As a matter of fact, as I'm talking to you, snowing outside, and it's roughly about 31 degrees.
Wow.
And up in the mountains to the east of Santa Fe, we're already a mile high, but even farther on up, you have the Sangre de Cristos. These mountains, I said, is an offshoot of the Rocky Mountain spine there. Mm-hmm. And during the winter time there, the reason they're called the Sangre de Cristos, the Blood of Christ Mountains, is because around dusk, with the way that the atmosphere is, the mountaintops have a reddish hue to them. This is as far as the world goes. In other words, it's going to be like something out of Edgar Rice Burroughs or H.G. Wells' book of the Martian, foliage there in wrecked London of 1898. You have this red hue on the mountains, on the snow, on the trees on up there. It's a magnificent look. And you have all of this, to the south, you can talk about the 33rd degree line that cuts through New Mexico, all this kind of stuff that makes for Santa Fe to be, this vortex for crackpot history, for bizarre paranormal. It's the light, the ground, the people, you name it. It's a paranormal deluxe.
Right. And a lot of people don't realize that the Santa Fe Trail, obviously the Santa Fe Trail, which is where a lot of people would trek out west when they were going to California to the gold. There was a lot of human traffic. It's not only people that settled there, but there was a lot of human activity that went through that area. As far as
right.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead. You went on out there.
Right. That. Yes.
Marlena?
Yes. Yeah. No, I thought I had lost you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Anyway, no, what I was going to say is that, sometimes people don't realize that areas like let's say Santa Fe, the Santa Fe Trail went through there, which was one of these routes that a lot of settlers or gold miners or, gunmen, whatever, would take on the way out to California because, of course, when they discovered gold in 1849 in California, everybody went out there to make their fortune or to make money from those trying to make their fortune. And that kind of activity also a lot of times will spawn, is a source for active hauntings. And that's why I'm saying, as far as the area where you're in, it's so rich in history.
Yeah, well, we had the trail, the Santa Fe Trail. We also got the railroad.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the 1930s cowboy films, the Atchison, Topeka, Santa Fe,
yes,
and other trails that come into Santa Fe. Mm-hmm. And this became a place where fast money was made. You had very good people, very bad people. Mm-hmm. And at one time, Santa Fe was such a no limits town. It had the nickname during Wild West days as the Sodom and Gomorrah of the West. And you had Santa Fe, a mafia here that ran the area. So if you ever see the movie Young Guns or Young Guns 2, that's a movie featuring the exploits of Billy the Kid and the Regulators.
Right.
Yeah, those bad guys that are going down to central New Mexico to rub out Billy and the Regulators, those are hitmen from the Santa Fe Ring or stooges that worked for the Dolan Murphy gang, which is, bowed the knee to the Santa Fe Ring. Santa Fe has, gangsters during Wild West days. We've had or UFOs of modern time. We've had ghosts from all eras, all kinds of mayhem, be it murder, brujas. Yes, like I say, Santa Fe. It's a cornucopia of the oddest of history and the strangest of the metaphysical.
Well, one of the things that I like is that sometimes you could go, and I've gone on different tours. Basically the person giving the tour will give you information that you could, for lack of a better word, you could Google. But like you said, because I remember we talked about this the last time. The real true story that sometimes is only somebody that's a native really knows the background, the backstory to the story that might be out there as to who, what did what, things like that.
On my tours, and I'll say, go to Santa Fe Ghost and History Tours.com, or you can just say Al Pacheco Santa Fe Tours or Al Pacheco Ghost Tours, whatever, and you'll get to me on Yahoo or Google, etc., and you'll see all the information there. But on my tours, you're just not going to get, here is the story of where the ghost of Jane X was seen. You'll get the historical background of this locale, and of course, this is going to link to the ghost story that this is where a massacre happened, or this is where this gunfight happened, etc., or this is where the brujas, the witches, the curanderas were. Then you'll also get information from my investigations at those locales. And at certain places on the tour, I will show you Xerox copies that have been taken, or Xerox copies of pictures that have been taken through the decades on my investigations or even on tours, because believe it or not, sometimes on my tours at certain places, and this is rare, but it does happen, and there's proof of that on the website, that people do get pictures of ghosts, of energies. Sometimes at certain places, the batteries will drain in a apparatus, and then we leave the area, they'll come back to life. Sometimes they won't. And even at a couple of places like this, people have been shoved. People have had a hard time breathing. They feel as if they're being not choked, but in other words, having a very hard time swallowing, like something's interfering with their neck area. And these are in areas where tradition says that this happened, history says that this happened, and on my investigations, there is, I have proof that something has happened there. Yeah.
Right, because you've been able to go so many times. Like I said, some places, maybe you're lucky and the first couple of times you'll get something, but sometimes it's being able to go back continuously on different days that you finally either see a pattern or just there to catch it, to witness it, to experience, which you obviously have been able to do. So as far as because I know that I'm sure, because I see I've done tours, and the majority of people usually they enjoy it, but there's always a skeptic in those groups. There's always somebody there that was dragged along by Have you ever had an experience with one of these diehard skeptics? Something happened to them, and they kind of wigged out on you.
Well, they didn't wig out on me, but okay. Well, here's a classic example. I mean, this is okay. There was this one guy. He was a good guy, but he was a skeptic, and we went into this place, this haunted mansion. It's a hotel now. It's called the La Posada Resort, and that's in Santa Fe. It's an exquisite resort, and I'll give you a little bit of background on it. This resort has been in existence since the mid 1930s. Prior to that, it was the mansion, or the Al Capone of Wild West days. This is the man by the name of Abraham Staub. And the place is haunted. And the main building is the old mansion, and there's other buildings there that have been remodeled, etc. there. And one of the ladies on the tour was staying there at the hotel, and we're doing this tour, and we were able to get on up into the murder room. In other words, Abraham Staub's wife was dispatched upstairs in the Staub suite. Now, the partisans of the Staub family goes, oh, no, that's not what happened. She just dropped dead, or she suicided. But in other words, this is Abraham Staub. His M.O., he's got the hitmen. His fingerprints are all over the Colfax County War, the Lincoln County War. That's when Billy the Kid. And if you talk to any of the old, they're not going to have very nice things to say about Abraham Staub and the Santa Fe Ring. Well, the point being is we go on up there into this room there. And this room, Julia was imprisoned on up there for 5 years. Wow. And it's not, kind of like Jane Eyre, except Jane Eyre was in the cellar. But this upstairs where she was imprisoned by her husband, his captains were able to go up and bring her food every day and clothing. It wasn't Devil's Island. In other words, you have hot and cold, running water, big bedroom, big foyer, etc. But nevertheless, she's up there for 5 years. But I won't get into why she was isolated and all the shenanigans of that. But she's on up there, and then in May of 1896, it's curtains for her. Okay, so we go on up there, and I'm showing this group this room, and I'm saying this is where this happened, this and that and that. So have always done my best to be nice to the ghost of Julia on up there. Okay. Before they went corporate, go on up there, say hello. She likes roses. Bring a vase with a rose on up there, leave it on the mantle of the fireplace, etc. Well, anyway, so I go on in there, I announce myself, etc., and we finish with the tour in this room after I don't know how many 20 minutes in there, whatever it was, and I'm on my way on out, and I say goodbye to Julia, and I just blow a kiss into one of the rooms there, and no, I don't see anything. Say goodbye, Julia, and I close the door behind us, and then that man tells the other person, with this other lady in the group there, and she said, "Did you hear that?" No. And after Allan said, "Goodbye, Julia," there was a female voice that said, "Goodbye." Oh. Yeah. So that's the most skeptical one, of the bunch, and it happens to him. So that's how to say an audio type of confirmation. I've had other types of situations where people have just gotten very unnerved. I can't believe this, or other people, like in this one area that's close to a property that used to belong to the Santa Fe Ring, where stories are that good guys and bad guys, became fertilizer. They were buried in the 6-acre area during Wild West days. This one guy is, he's having a very hard time breathing there. And I said, well, that happens to other people every now and then in this area. So other people have taken pictures, and back in the old days of 35 millimeter before digital. Right. I can't believe it. Let me show you this picture here, Allan. I'm going to send it to you. I'm going to send a copy of it. And then with computers, people sometimes are able to say, well, that wasn't there. Take a look at this in the viewer here, Allan. Look at this. And I said, well, we're in a haunted area.
Exactly. And isn't it, for the people that don't know ahead of time, because you've been through it, so due to the spots, but when people come and tell you and you say, I've heard this before, so that they're having some type of repetitive experience, especially when you don't tell them ahead of time. Is what I'm saying, that they tell you, I'm like that guy, I'm having a hard time breathing, or I feel a pressure, and you're like, okay. What are the chances that after a while X amount of people are going to describe the same feeling?
Yeah, well, it doesn't happen. I mean, this would be like, hitting the lottery five times in a row or something to that effect. So on different places, I know a haunted location. I won't say anything because I do not want to influence a person and somebody say, well, you know what, that's power of the mind, and that's how come this is happening here. So in some areas, I'll give a heads on up, and I'll say, okay, con cuidado, and I will tell them this is what happens here. In other areas, I won't, and then something happens, and I'll tell them, and I say, well, okay, now that this has happened to you, let me show you a photo here that was taken X amount of years ago, and you'll see what I'm talking about. In that area where you experienced this is what happened. Or then, this is what happened, just last year, etc., and just tell them an experience of what happened. So on my tours, this is surfing the pier area. Mm-hmm. We surf the big waves. So bring out your elephant gun and the big board, and out we go. Yeah.
Let me ask you, and I. As far as the some people call it a ghost story / urban legend, which is La Llorona. Okay, and I know that it's along the same lines as the Hitchhiker Ghost or Resurrection Mary, where everybody has some version of it. Have you had any experiences with that urban myth as far as any sightings or people telling you that they've had an experience like that?
Yes. And let me just say, first of all, Resurrection Mary, that's legit. Now, there's going to be some stories, and for those that don't know about it, that's going to be on Archer Way. That's a roadway in Chicago, and it's about this ghost that has been seen since the late 1920s on this road. And there's a cemetery next to this road, Archer, and oddly enough, on this here, Marlena, is that the sightings of her have gone down since they've redone the road, so really? It's nowhere near as many. Yeah, and so the energy is not, how to say, as prevalent as what it was with this ghost there. But getting back to La Llorona, here in this area, that's a confirmation. La Llorona, for those that don't speak Spanish, that means the crying woman. And we could, do hours and hours on this. I'll try to give the short synopsis on this, or try to, but it's a ghost that has been seen here. And there's different versions of her, but this is the legit story of where it happened, and the genesis of this is here in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Really? And and to the thing about this, it's going to be like Paula Yates of Houston, Texas. In other words, this woman ended up drowning her children in this water ditch, this water canal here in Santa Fe, and it's off of Canyon Road. That's a road in the eastern part of Santa Fe. Specifically, the place, the water ditch, the canal is called Acequia Madre, the Mother Ditch, and sometimes she's known as the Ditch Witch. Now, this ghost has been seen from the headwaters of the Rio Grande, which is southern Colorado, through New Mexico, Texas, where the Rio Grande meanders into the Gulf of Mexico. Right. And ghosts do not have that kind of travel radius. What does have that kind of well, let me back on up. And this is where I get into a lot of flack with some of the books that I've done or other radio shows that I've done. This is not a ghost. It's misidentified energy. I think it's a Djinn. A Djinn, you're going to find those in the Mohammedan literature, in the Quran, etc. In other words, it's a shapeshifter. Right. And that is what has been seen. And these shapeshifters are not humanity's friends. They're out to destroy humanity. And this shapeshifter, La Llorona, the crying woman, when at a distance she's very, very beautiful. Up close, she's, sin and death warmed on over, a terrible hag from hell. And that's the story of La Llorona here. Yeah, so I've done all kinds of investigations on that, and that's how come I say it's a Djinn and been misidentified, and as far as every now and then, some people have seen her, heard her. Other people that they say have disappeared.
Right.
It was not UFO abduction. It was this shapeshifter, the Djinn, and So it's This is point X. This is bullseye as far as La Llorona goes. Yeah.
I did not know that the origins of the Llorona story was there out of Santa Fe. I mean, I knew it was in the Southwest. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, it goes back to the days of the conquistadors. And, I can, on the tour, I've got many different tours. I do history tours, I do ghost tours, I do lectures, etc. But I do a little bit of La Llorona, and sometimes I go into more depth into it, and other times I'll just let it go. But I'll just say one thing. You see, here, again, too, and this is going off onto a tangent, but, we're surfing the big waves. I maintain that there is a stargate, portal, los portales, doorways, or a doorway that moves, that is hidden, that is to the east of Santa Fe, in that slang area, the TECOs Triangle, where all these people disappear.
Right.
And this type of doorway that moves around out there in the TECOs Triangle, in other words, it's a takeoff of the Bermuda Triangle, that type of mystery where UFO or craft have been seen, shades. I say that this is like the equivalent of the 1966 William Shatner Star Trek wormhole type of thing. In other words, through this doorway that opens and closes, that's where craft can come through, physical craft, also dimensional beings, you name it. In other words, it's a galactic highway of a doorway. And this goes back to what some of the Mohammedans, or some of the Mohammedan books talk about, these doorways that move around in the Middle East where the Djinn can come through. And that's what I'm saying, where the doorway is. And that's how come Santa Fe has so much UFO activity on... And again, we're going off all over the map.
Don't worry, keep going. Yeah. It's interesting. I love it. And because, I mean, there's... It's really weird because almost one thing ties into the other.
Yeah.
When you start looking at the source of it or where it could go, and sometimes it's like you said, it's not the expected stuff of like what you said about that the Llorona is in fact a shapeshifter, because most people think of the Llorona as an urban myth where sometimes she, like you said, she takes people, or she's like kind of like in a way a banshee. Like if you see her, it's like she's saying, somebody's gonna die. There's always, but very few ever refer to her that I know of as a shapeshifter.
Right.
Like you did. Which would also explain, like you said,
well, that
how she's seen all over such a wide area.
Right. Yeah. And the thing about that is, shapeshifter. Again, too, some of the things that are, that other people, for example, that movie that came on out that made a ton of money, La Llorona. Well, that's they did it in such a way, but there's really no, they did it for chills and thrills. There's really no, historical background in how they did that movie. And I've yet to see something that really does, go into depth about the story and about what has been reported here. For example, The World According to Allan, and there's a few other people that agree with me on this. Other things that are identified as that this is a physical being or this is a ghost. It's not a ghost. Again, it's a shapeshifter.
Right.
For example, and I've changed my mind on this. For example, the Sasquatch, the Bigfoot, that is not a being. That is another shapeshifter that comes through. And another thing is also the skinwalkers. And we have a number of those sightings there in northwest New Mexico. And I don't know if we went into this last time, and you can cut me on off and say, no, Allan, this is... Okay, for example, there in northwest New Mexico with the Navajos, they were, when they ended up getting conquered by the U.S. Army, in other words, the Navajos were the best slavers around. I mean, they had all kinds of slaves for, be it, nomadic Indians that they would
Right.
sell. These sold Spaniards, Mexicans, Americans, you name it. And that's what got them in trouble.
Okay.
And they're very good capitalists now. They went from one form
Let me tell you
of
something.
capitalism to another one, right?
It
With their
happens.
beautiful rugs, yeah. And so when they were finally conquered in 1864, some of the chiefs there said, "Hey, you know what? Leave our medicine men behind here, because there is doorways that move around on over here and open, and this is where we get the skinwalkers coming in on there. We don't want to have any more of these on in here."
Okay.
And he said, "Nope, everybody is going down to Fort Sumner, and you are going to become Americanized." So they were sent down there, and that's the Trail of Tears. And then a few years later, they were sent on back. And then you're saying to yourself, well, how come I'm on up here, with my tribe? Because of the slave. There was Indians enslaved other Indians, and that's how come
Right.
I ended on up on over here as being or my ancestor being liberated, etc. So we get back there, and the story is into the Four Corners area, since those Navajo medicine men were gone, that all of these skinwalkers are now roaming about. So now they've been having a heck of a time since that time to send them on back, or try to, keep them in check. But that's one of the reasons why you have the phenomena and evil tidings up in that area. For
Let me ask you
example,
this: from what I understand, and that among the Indians in that area, they don't even want to talk about skinwalkers. Like, it's like you get the stink eye if you bring up that subject. Like, I'm not talking about that, because
right,
they're so
because
afraid of it.
Yeah, because they're saying to yourself, well, you know what, I could end on up, ringing the dinner bell for this. Because, and again, too, you say, so why is that? Because of all the negative things that are happening on up there, or happened on up there, and you say to yourself, well, gosh, the murders, the alcoholism, this kind of stuff, why even try to, give fear, or give that emotion that perhaps these things can pick up on to come on over to a person's house and cause more mayhem. And for example, where I was going on this, how is this for coincidence? And again, too, the old line is there such a thing as coincidence? I don't believe in coincidence. Well, of all the roads to build that went north of Gallup into Utah, into the Four Corners area, into the heart of Skinwalker territory, was old US 666.
Right, because as a matter of fact, the Skinwalker Ranch is up there in the Utah Basin.
That was called, that was labeled, and you go to the old atlases, Rand McNally, and that was Highway 666. And people would see things. What was that? And was that a skinwalker? There's been terrible car accidents, all kinds of things on up there. So yeah, that just goes to show you a little bit about the energy of these things, of what they can bring if they cross your path.
And you know what? For those people that think about the 666, whether it's, I want to call it superstition. Back in the 1980s, I worked for a major corporation who happened to have a huge building, numerically as 666, and everybody would refer to it after a while as a 666 building. Guess what? After a while, they petitioned the county to change the number of their building. And this was a big corporation that you think, okay, why would they care one way or the other? You can accuse people of being superstitious as far as, what does that mean? But yeah, I want to say, like in the 1990s, they went to the county and said, we need you to alter the plans or whatever. They're the ones that assign, the numbers to a building. Give us something else, not this 666 thing.
Right.
And they did. They changed it. So I understand completely what you're talking about when you say that highway. It's weird, but yeah, of all the highways, that one.
And to go into an area that has had, through the centuries, all kind of mayhem, and you're just adding more to it,
Yeah.
And of course, the joke is, or bad joke, but I find it kind of humorous, is that's where you see that the hitchhiker, from the Twilight Zone, going my way.
Right.
If you ever see him on Old Route 66,
Right.
wanting to go up the Highway 666, don't stop and don't give him a ride.
Right.
And that Twilight Zone episode with, gosh, what was her name? The character's name was Nan something or other from Philadelphia. Orson Welles did the original one on a suspense theater back in the 1940s, and of course that the hitchhiker is seen on Old Route 66. But nevertheless, when you get to Gallup, you had the choice there of taking Route 666 or continue on with a double six to get to Los Angeles. And something else, Marlena, on that there too. Just show you a little bit about this area here, and we're talking about the strange things, Santa Fe, New Mexico, and all of this is also the number 33. And again, too, this area has so much, stuff doing with, sinister numbers or sacred geometry. For example, the number 33, and I really don't understand this, and I've been studying this for not as much as I don't have time to really do that anymore. And unfortunately, the guy that knew a lot about this, he died about 25 years ago, and I was only able to talk to him for a little bit. But number 33, for example, to clarify this, for example, with the Masons, the top of the line of the pyramid is going to be the 33rd level.
Right.
And with that 33rd level, you don't get to that level or into that club by deeds like being a good Shriner and helping out at a burnt ward in a hospital or you're picked to get on up there. People say it's Old Boys Network, whatever. Okay, well anyway, there is something about that number 33. And, of course, with the meridian and how it comes on into the USA, that's going to go through Charleston, South Carolina, and that's going to be where the first Masonic temple was. Now, mind you, I'm not saying that the Masons do a lot of good. The first to 32, from number 1 to number 32 level, 33rd level, it's so top secret. Who knows what goes on there, good and bad or bad and good. On and on. But the thing about that is that secrecy I'm always suspicious about. Anyway, getting back to this meridian, so we go through the 33rd, and you can have X amount of, on the 33rd, you can be X amount of seconds to the north of the 33rd, X amount of minutes to the north of the 33rd or to the south of it, etc. But you're on the 33rd meridian. Well, where does the 33rd meridian go through? Okay, Dallas, Texas, Dealey Plaza. Okay, that's where the USA had the coup d'etat when JFK was assassinated.
Exactly.
A lot of people really don't put too much stock into that, but
No.
that's where everything went smash as far as the secret society, the invisible hand, taking on over the U.S. government.
Yes.
And what happened in Dealey Plaza? That's where you have the 3 highways coming on in, through Dealey Plaza. Okay, that was the shock to the American conscience.
Yes.
In other words, there's a living, breathing American spirit that people, and you keep on going to New Mexico. Okay, remember I told you X amount of seconds, minutes, you're still on the 33rd meridian. Where does the 33rd meridian go through? Okay, Trinity, New Mexico. And what happened at Trinity, New Mexico in July of 1945? That's where the first atomic bomb went off. Bang.
Wow.
And then that's going to change, the outcome of world history, right? And what does Trinity mean? Trinidad, the 3, right?
3, exactly.
The Father, Son, the Holy Ghost, right? That's what we got there. Now they say the Holy Spirit. Okay, what's also on the 33rd? Hang on to yourself, Marlena. Roswell, Walker Air Force Base. Yeah, in 1947, July 3rd, July 4th, depending on if it was 11:30 at night or 1:30 in the morning, that's where a UFO went down, or was either, crashed or got shot down, or who knows what, but it went down at, there on the 33rd. And then keep on going and go across the Pacific, and I didn't realize this when I was in Japan, but the 33rd Well, flanking the 33rd meridian is Hiroshima and Nagasaki,
Wow.
the two cities that got taken on out by the atomic bomb on the 6th and 9th of August 1945.
Right.
Yeah, so yeah, and here's something else too about the 33rd. You know, the only club in Disneyland in Anaheim, California, that you're able to drink liquor, you know, booze, you know, wine, whiskey, whatever, beer. That's the top secret Club 33 in Disneyland,
I've heard
and
of that.
and you can only get into it by it's a private club. You can only get into it, you know, by invitation. So
Yeah,
so
exactly. And it makes you wonder what are the qualifiers, right?
yeah, and then of course you know you go into more of this kind of stuff about Disney being taken on
Yes.
over by black ops after World War II, so it become this
Yes.
propaganda machine, and how it's
Yes.
twisted Americans' morality since the mid '70s onward. You know, all this kind of stuff. But it's amazing. We're
Yes.
talking about the numbers and the power of numbers, and again too what we've got here in New Mexico. We're talking about Santa Fe, and I thought I'd throw in the 666 and the
Yes.
double three.
Well, no, and also when you said that that Route 666 that heads into Utah, that's where the Skinwalker Ranch up there in the Ute Basin is out
Right.
of up there, where they've had, well, now that they've kind of tamped down on people going in there, but some of the phenomena that they described that was going on there was pretty extreme.
Right, and that kind of extreme phenomena has happened not only up there at the Skinwalker Ranch, which Bigelow bought, but also the in and around Santa Fe. For example, let me just say something here about, again, too, putting more pieces of the jigsaw puzzle onto the table here. And again, you know, if anybody has any information about this, go to my website, SantaFeGhostAndHistoryTours.com, and you'll find a link so you can email me. But again, what's his name? Bob Bigelow. He bought that ranch, and you know that
Right.
Bob Bigelow is one of the main men who is, how to say, private contractor to NASA. In other words,
Yes.
he is doing all kinds of things with the satellites and
Yeah.
other types of things. And you say to yourself, well, okay, this guy, what's going on there at the ranch that he bought? Was there
Exactly.
some type of Stargate portal? Who knows what? And he wants, you know, more inside information on this. So
Yeah.
again, too, that's not coincidence. He wanted that. He,
Oh no, no,
to study it.
that's the thing. He didn't open it up for like to. On the contrary, from what I understand, they have very heavy security
Yeah.
surrounding the area. Like from what I understand, extreme security, like no trespassing, and so it wasn't like, oh, I purchased this to like run tours, for example. I'm gonna make it a money making thing. No, he's cleared. He doesn't want anybody on there. He's got tight security. Nobody's even allowed to come close to it. And from what I understand, I don't know how accurate this is, part of it was because some of the phenomena had diminished.
Right.
And I guess
Yeah.
he was hoping that by making everybody no people or very little people, they would be able to have it come back. And again, which leads to what you were saying. There's something there that he wants to have access to only for himself, in other words.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So you know, he's being a good businessman. He's also being a good the man who would be king type of
Yes.
stuff there. And again, too, I'm you know, it's better that he has it rather than Pol Pot, you know, the dictator of Cambodia or somebody like that.
Yeah.
I mean, but you say to yourself again too, he's linked to NASA, and you know, then again, there's other stories too about just how much did Howard Hughes, how much was he linked to NASA too, with some of the stuff, be it the Intergratron and other types of things that his personal pilot ended on up the property, him buying there, west of Zizix there with the Intergratron there in Mojave. But there's these places where it can be very, very hot as far as energy goes, and it can still be hot, or it goes completely dormant, or it's sporadic.
Yes.
And what hits these tripwires, who knows what. Like one place that was, had incredible phenomena as far as the missing goes. That would be and then it went cold, would have been the Bennington area, the Bennington Triangle in the late 40s, early 1950s. And now that place is dormant.
Where
There's certain
does
places,
that Bennington
it's like
Triangle lie? Alan? Where is that? What,
I'm sorry.
what are
What's
the
that? I didn't
points
hear
on
you.
what are the points on that Bennington Triangle?
Well, they're gonna. Okay, it's going to be outside of Bennington, Vermont. That's
Mm-hmm.
a town where they have that tremendous revolutionary pillar,
Right.
magnificent thing there. And there's going to be the long trail that it encompasses, and it's going to be going out past the Somerset Reservoir. I don't have the okay. It's going
Right.
to include Glastonbury Mountain. I don't have
You
the exact geography on it, but if for those people in the Northeast or those people listening, okay, go to the Rand McNally and find the Glastonbury Mountain, the Somerset Hill Mountain Reservoir, the Long Trail, and that's the area that I'm talking about. And for example, the vanishings are just as unique as what's happened, or as perplexing as what's happened up in the PECOs Triangle. For example, I'm trying to think of the woman's name who she came from a very, very wealthy family, and this is in 1946, and she was a student there at the university there in Bennington, and she just walked up that trail on December the 6th, 1946, and she just disappeared. And her body was never found, no bones, no clothing. And the thing about this is that her father had a tremendous amount of money. I think her name was
right.
Weldon. Was it Jane Weldon? Anyway, her father, no, Apollo Weldon. I think Jane Weldon is from the Go-Go's, right? The
Well,
1980s.
also what I thought it was interesting is that that back in the 1930s, Lovecraft set a lot of his stories out of in that area of Vermont.
Well, you're absolutely right, sister. I do not know what that guy was channeling, but he got something there, yeah. And Lovecraft, I mean, that guy,
Yeah.
he was out there, and he had some good stuff. I mean, I think Edgar Allan Poe is is the best. He's my fav as far as that goes. But Lovecraft, he's on up there.
But he was talking about that disappearances in Vermont and how these towns are weird people, and also strange disappearances. And he had this whole thing going on long before. You know what I'm saying? Even though supposedly he made it up in his in his mind, but it's almost like, what is it that they call life imitating art, kind of thing.
No, art imitating life. In his case, yeah, I mean that's what was he? Yeah, yeah. Let's say something about Paula Weldon. Her father was a industrialist. I mean, he made a ton of money during World War II, and I don't think they had the state police were not been formed in Vermont back then, and. Anyway, she disappeared. And this guy was so powerful that he was able to get the FBI to investigate this disappearance. And again, too, I mean, the FBI, and well, I say, the FBI, has got a slack wire record since 1963. I mean, because with Hoover and them saying that it's Oswald was a lone gunman. I mean, come on, give me a break.
Right.
But back then, 1946, these were the guys that were trying to keep industrial bases safe from Nazi saboteurs in the East Coast area. So, for these guys to not even become clueless and not come up with any evidence of what happened to Paula Weldon, that speaks volumes. I mean, you've got an area, let's comb it, we're going to come up with some type of information. And it's not like, how do you say, like with, Dallas 63, where they come up with a bunch of information, but then it gets squelched. Yeah, it's that place is say, had all kinds of weird phenomena for, we're going to say, for 8-9 years, etc.
Right, because it was only like certain years that all these things happened, like mostly, right? It wasn't like a history. It was like certain years only that they had the disappearances.
Right, 46, I think, through 53, and I think the last, disappearance was with gosh, what was her name? Frieda, gosh, what was her name? Frieda Langer. And Frieda Langer was, this was another one. I mean, another beyond belief type of story.
Mm-hmm.
So she and her husband, and I guess it's her brother-in-law or whoever it was, they go camping, and the husband ends on up building a camp there, and this is October of, I think like 53, and the brother-in-law and the Frieda go for a hike up this trail. So they start to go on up this trail. She slips, gets gets a little bit wet in this brook,
mm-hmm.
so she's going to walk back to the trail there. So I think it was the brother-in-law walks her like within 200 yards. Okay, I can sign off. You're right there, just around the corner. There's the campsite. So he takes back on up the trails. So when he comes back, what is it? Maybe at dusk. Where's Frieda? Well, I thought she was with you. You mean my wife's not with you? No. Well, did she come back to the camp? No. So they go to the authorities, and both of them passed their lie detector, whatever primitive detector test we had back in those days, and they have a search there, and they search and they search and they search, and no Frieda, no nothing, and then 6 months later, in a place that they've already searched, somebody finds Frieda's decomposing body there in this one area. In other words, how could this place that had been searched and searched, and then they find her body in like got beamed down again or something, and one of her hands was missing, etc. And people say, well, that could have been an animal or whatever. But I mean, that's the type of thing that they had there. For example, this one other guy, and I'm going to say this like in '48. His name was Middy's River. He was a guide, and he was in his 70s, and he's leading this group down this trail to the Bennington area, and I guess the long trail, and eventually this trail goes all the way out up to Canada, but he's ahead of the group there, and he doesn't. What happened to him? And all they find on that trail is a bullet that could have dropped from his belt, but nothing there. And they've never ever found, again, body, clothing, bone of this guy. And they said, well, he knew the trail. He was a backwoodsman, and of course, skeptics said, well, he had a heart attack and he ran on off into in delirium and fell into a well. Well, that's really kind of
it's far-fetched, isn't it?
Yeah, far-fetched. I mean, all these people disappearing on up there, and that's kind of like the equivalent to what happens over here in the TECOs Triangle east of Santa Fe. And again, too, what is it? It's a combination of a lot of things. Of a doorway opening on up, you got Djinn, you've got ghosts, you've got dimensional beings, you've got E.T., you name it.
Right. Is it one of those things that, was it intentional that they were taken, or was it one of those things, wrong place, wrong time? When a portal opens and there you are.
Gosh, one of the things about that was, I heard this back in the 1960s, and it always stayed in my mind, was that there was this rock that moved around on up there in the Bennington Triangle. It looked like it wasn't a rock. In other words, it's the rock, the best way that the Indians of that area, I forget what tribe it was going to be, but they're going to be an offshoot of the Algonquin, would say that the rock would absorb you. So is this kind of like, how do you say, the way that you would say like it's going to be a mirror, a doorway, a portal, a portal, and if you lean on it, you fall on into it, or does something come on out of it and get you, or that kind of thing. In other words, it's going to look just like a regular door, but it's and it always stayed in my mind. I said, once again, Rod Serling couldn't come up with that one there about something that moves around that's going to absorb you or take you from there. Perfect camouflage of a door.
Right, and the timing sometimes is important. That it has to be under maybe at a certain date or certain situations for that to happen. That's why you'll have people that will go through the area and they're fine.
Right. For example, when Jane Weldon, not Jane Weldon, I got the Go-Go's on my mind, Our Lips Are Sealed holiday vacation song. Yeah. Okay. The thing about that was she was going on up this trail, and the story goes that there was some hikers a couple hundred yards behind her, and this is the long trail outside of Bennington, and she goes behind this big rock where the trail goes, and of course, when those two hikers, the man and the woman, the husband and wife, turn around the corner, they should be able to see her, a couple hundred yards still ahead of them, and she's not there. So, well, that was really strange. Where did she go? And again, too, I mean, you have this person who you should be able to see, and in that X amount of minute or so, whatever it was, or a couple of minutes of them going those couple hundred yards or 200 yards at the most, and she's gone. And that's kind of like what it is with UFOs. You see them, and all of a sudden, like in 2 seconds, they just did a shot straight on up into the stratosphere, and they're gone. You can see one, and then bang, they're gone, and just go straight on up. Or if you see a ghost, well, where did it just go? It just blinked on out. It just vanished.
David Paulides, he's done a lot of this number crunching as far as data is concerned for all these disappearances, and and I know he's very specific about saying I excluded people that were suicidal or predation of animals. So, and one of the last things I had heard, because on and off I've heard different interviews, that he found that a large majority of people that had disappeared were of German extraction. And I was like, what is that? That's so weird. But sometimes you look at these common denominators and they don't make sense. It's like, what are the odds that you're going to have, first of all, these disappearances, like exactly like what you described, people that are lost from sight just for seconds. And then once you start collecting the data, that you find this pattern and German extraction, it's like, that's weird. That is really weird.
Okay, well, let me say something about, and I'm going to throw some shade here.
Go right ahead.
Paulides, or Paulides, how do you say? That guy, okay, some of the stuff that he gets is right on, but, he... for example, when he wrote about the missing on up here, and I contacted him, and very snarky. Well, maybe you know some things that I don't know, and I was giving some information about this one specific happening that happened up here, 1948, 47, whatever it was,
right?
Up and then again too, the guy. Okay, some of his, for example, he did something about male natal, and he did something about another person missing or other missing on up here. So I said, well, I do all kinds of research on up there. You can go onto my website, and you can see this, Marlena. You're going to see me doing for searches, for or investigations, etc. on up there, and with equipment and stuff like this. So he just kind of, how do you say, well, he wasn't, snarky about things, and some of his information is good. Others is really slack wire, and said, no, you didn't get this. Here's the, and I'm not. This was to help him. I said, do you have any information? Maybe here's this, here's that, and anyway. So if he's right about German extraction, then wow, because that's one of the things that I was always trying to calculate with my figures about, is there any authenticity? Is it a special type of blood?
Right. Was there a physical something?
Yeah, is it something rare? AB negative? What was the whatever it was, and is time of the year, all kinds of stuff that, and I couldn't come on up with. So if he says it's going to be German extraction, I kind of don't. I'm going to say, well, if he's, I'll be, if he's correct, then hoorah. But so far I have not come on up with in my research that that's a fact. Now, one of the things about German extraction, and again too with some of these things, and this is very, very interesting.
Right.
And this goes back to der Volk, the the German word for the people, and about fool society, and that they are a different type of people, and there may be something to that as far as if you really go into their mythology, and some people say, oh, that's just a bunch of lies. But if you go back into how the Germans are, the Teutonic, they are a completely different people as compared to the rest of Europe. You say, well, you can apply that to the Italians, to the Spaniards. No, as far as who the Germans are and how they've retained their uniqueness, and it doesn't matter if who, through their history, be it with the Romans trying to conquer them or the Romans conquering part of them, they were always der Volk, the Germans, and the way that they have this work ethic and their logic. Now, their logic at times can go to extremes. For example, with their race cars in the 1960s, I mean, them trying to make their cars lighter, and you get to the point with the suspension and the springs. Well, this plastic's not going to work. You're going to need steel. That's how come your wishbones are breaking on the cars.
Right, you're sacrificing one thing that you can't sacrifice. Yeah.
But and it goes back to like the World War II technology. Okay, that you have fantastic quality on the tank, but you don't need to be this over-engineered. You're going to need quantity, but thank God that they were not able to get that idea and mass-produce the Tiger tanks, like because they were just fantastic machines. But the point being about that is the Germans are unique, and there's a lot of people here in the United States that do have German names. A lot of brave farm boys from Germany immigrated on over to the U.S.
Yeah. There were masses. There were waves of certain groups of immigrants, and Germany had definitely. There's a lot of states that were populated by certain groups, among them Germans. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm not really too sold on that idea about that, and.
This
and again,
is the thing.
Going back to some of the things that I've uncovered and the way that he was with, how I tried to contact him and tell him a few things and the way that he responded, and then on another something about the book there. The guy, maybe I just got him on a couple of. Well, I don't. Well, no, I'm not going to let him off the hook. I'm going to say, okay, I've got a jaundiced eye to that idea. Okay.
Well, and this is the thing, because he was the. He's done a lot of, he's done several books, and, of course, it went just beyond simple. He's done some on hunters, and people have disappeared, and like I said, I'm sure that gathering this information is very time consuming. But when I heard this thing about the Germans, I was like, how could he determine that? Because, unless it's a very recent disappearance, I've done research myself, newspapers back in the 40s and 50s and what. And you could go, where are you assuming that this person is of German extraction because of a surname?
Right.
That's maybe the closest you're going to get as far as information about this disappearance. They'll have the names of the parents or the family. But still, you might not be on the right track. In other words, what's the qualifier? How much could you say of all these people that you could say the bulk of them seem to be of German extraction? How did you find that?
And then and then the thing about that, and that's again, the slackwire research on saying, well, gosh, like this one guy, down south in Dixie, it gets hot. Well, you just down south in Dixie.
Right.
Yeah, and what he's gonna, and my point being about this is, he's gonna say, well, okay, Germanic name. Well, okay, Anglo-Saxon or Anglo-Saxon. That's gonna be an offshoot of a German of Nordic name. Okay, because English names, the Angles were a German tribe. The Saxons were a German tribe, and they ended on up in England. That's where you get the term Anglo-Saxon.
Right.
And the thing about this is you can say, well, the name Weldon, that's German. Well, yeah, but this was an English Weldon. But okay, it's going to same thing with the name of Jepson or maybe Tedford. Well, I mean, okay, those are, again, could be Anglo-Saxon names, but again, too, then that's going to be linked towards the German stock. Now, Eisner, that is Der Reich. That's a name from the Reich, and that was a person that disappeared up there. All these names I just gave you were people that disappeared up in the Bennington Triangle. So with that, I've heard some people say, well, it's this ethnicity or that ethnicity, and so far I have not been able to become Sherlock Holmes and say, aha, or Archimedes, Eureka.
For example, he says that a lot of the children that are stolen have some disability. Well, I'm saying stolen, disappeared, whatever. And I could say, okay, I could see how that would be, you could verify that, because most newspapers would mention something if a child had some type of disability, especially when they were in the searching phase, like this child. Okay, I could see how after you collect all this information, you go, wow, guess what? Most all these children had some type of disability. Okay, because that's usually mentioned. But the lineage, that's the part I don't see how he was able to gather that information.
Right, and I would say one thing on that just and again too, anybody has any information on this, let me know, and I'm going to give my website again, SantaFeGhostAndHistoryTours.com. You can email me. But one of the things that we're talking about, trying to make, kind of like a blanket statement that's going to last, it's going to hold on up, is about UFOs as far as the cigar-shaped type of craft. Now, the past 20 years, the classic cigar-shaped craft have been redesigned, or maybe it's a new alien race, but it's more of, like a flattened, wafer, oblong wafer type of craft with some structures like on the right-hand side of the craft there. Now, the classic cigar shape, those are very rare. I mean, the last that we've really seen of them was about 20 years ago. But the thing about that is about the cigar type of craft, be it the oblong wafer or the old classic cigar craft, is that they would be seeing like over major highways, vehicle arteries, or over populated areas, and you say to yourself, well, why is that? Are they looking for something? How is that coming? It's out over old Route 66? Is that out over this small town in New Mexico? Why are these craft seen versus other craft that are seen, out in the middle of nowhere or something, or over the ocean or who knows what, but as compared to these craft there. So that's just one thing that kind of, I jump to as far as we're talking about broad ideas about it just being Germanic type of people. But then again, too, I'll say something about the Germans, and again, Fool Society and some of the stuff that happened before and during World War II. And it's quite possible that the Germans, through their magic, and a lot of people, modern history books will just reject this, but if you go deep into this with the occultism of the Nazis, that they were channeling something, that they had linked into something that maybe gave them some tips about rocketry and about some of their technology, World War II. Because if you get into the mythology, the ethos, the religion of Nazism, and the black sun, the swastika. In other words, they're trying to tap into something.
Right. And a lot of people I know think, well, they just had a lot of smart scientists. I'm not going to say no. But yes, but they were just, as much as they were into science, they were very, very deep into occultism and discovering stuff that was, from ancient times forward.
Exactly. Yes. And one of the things too about that is you get into the occultism and the branches of Luciferian that sparked the that was the bedrock of Nazism. In other words, I'm trying to think of the guy who was, in other words, who financed Nazism and ended up getting this other guy to be like the handler of Adolf Hitler and got Hitler going. And the thing about this is, for example, Aleister Crowley, the most sinister man or one of the most sinister men to walk the world. He was a witch, a Luciferian. He was there, back and forth or on the edges of these other groups there in Germany before everything went smash. And on this, about what were they channeling, what did they get, and some of the things that von Braun, the father of rocketry for the Nazis, said, and about some of the supposedly help that he got from parts unknown. I always found this very, very fascinating. And for example, Crowley, he was his own publishing company with all the stuff that he's written or wrote, I should say. And in one of his books, and I forget the title of it, he says that when he was doing one of his seances there in Long Island, New York, and I'm going to say this is like in 1913 or maybe 1917 or something to that effect. He opened on up this portal through demonic sex magic or whatever, and don't anybody do that. I'm not, you're just dooming yourself. But
exactly.
And this creature, he saw this creature, and this creature communicated with him, and the creature's name was Lamb. Like Mary had a little lamb, Lamb. And the way that he describes it, it was going to be, a gray. A gray alien.
Wow.
And this was on up there by, what's the name of that place up there? I would have studied up on this if I would known that we were going to be going to this area here on the show. But it's up there by, it's Montauk, Long Island.
Okay.
And here's something that's very, very interesting about Montauk. Okay, so then later on, after all of this, the government, Uncle Sam, bought up northern Montauk area and had a military base on up there. It's called Camp Hero. Yeah, and Camp Hero closed down in 1969, and some of the area you still can't get into. It's fenced off. Other areas become part of a federal park there. And the thing about that was, this is where Crowley is doing his
all his weird
summoning.
Yeah.
And the thing, and here's another link, another part of the jigsaw puzzle here. So in 1940, late 42, for sure 1943, there in the Philadelphia Naval Yards, that's where they're doing the Philadelphia experiment, trying to get a craft to become invisible because the U-boats are just taking too much of a toll on Allied shipping crossing the Atlantic. So supposedly, fact, lie, half-truths, etc.
Well, exactly, and I mean, this people don't realize that even you would think of Aleister Crowley as being a very adept magician or whatever you want to call him, but even he himself, when he had that house on the shores of where the Loch Ness monster is seen,
Lake Inverness,
Boleskine House, I believe it is. I don't know, I believe that's the name of it.
Yeah,
supposedly he summoned stuff and he left it open. In other words, he didn't bother to close it down, and people don't realize that. And you would think somebody like him would know what he was doing. And
that's what I'm getting at with the story on over here about Montauk here. Great minds think alike here, Marlena. Okay, because you see, with that there, again too, the facts, the lies, what people have said, the half truths, etc. The Philadelphia experiment. Where did it get moved on out of after 1943? Operation Rainbow. It got moved on up to Camp Hero. There where the crust was thin, like my late brother would always say, the veil is thinning. God bless Patrick, but he'd say that, and that's where the veil was thinning, and that's how come Aleister Crowley was able to open on up that and see where this being from another dimension, and supposedly with the Philadelphia experiment, and one of the second time that the ship vanished, this time it vanished for 15 to 20 minutes, according to the stories of the crew there, it was the ship was not gone for 15 to 20 minutes. It was gone 3 months, and another void, another dimension, where there was these praying mantis intelligent creatures there that were the enemies of humanity, and that's where the, what was it called? The destroyer escort, I was going to say the Sheffield, but the Sheffield was a ship that got hit in the Malvinas, the Falklands. Anyway, but yeah, where it went there. And then again to, so you're talking about a doorway opening on up, and then again to who ended on up in Aleister Crowley's mansion there at Inverness, or there in the Loch Ness.
Yeah, they had a lot of weird stuff going on
Led
there.
Zeppelin's band member who, what was his name? Was it, who was the guy who ended on up?
Right. Oh, did I lose him?
But yeah, so again, too, getting that kind of contact and what are they channeling, and again, too, it goes into the music business of a lot of things that are going on with some of the.
Yeah, they had a fire there, like not too long ago, a couple of years ago. The house suffered like a big fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but yeah, I've heard of a lot of people that have gone legend tripping around it, having really bad experiences even after they left the area. A lot of weird stuff, really unusual things going on with that place.
Yeah, and I think it was Jimmy Page. Wasn't he the one who choked on his vomit there? And he was the one who owned that mansion there that had been Aleister Crowley's. And if you look at, again, too, Aleister Crowley, the Golden Dawn, Luciferianism, and then also with the who Led Zeppelin was attached to, and then again too with Kenneth Anger and the another Luciferian who he's right out in the open about that. He must be in his 90s in Hollywood, and with what was it, the other work that he did for that Mick Jagger satanic film that what was made in '69. I mean, a lot of this stuff it is linked to, in other words, what they're channeling is not going to be positive. It may have a good beat and you can dance to it, as they say on the old Dick Clark show, but this stuff is danger, Will Robinson.
Well, you know what? And everybody forgets when Aleister Crowley passed away. He passed away in poverty. He had an addiction. I believe it was morphine. He was, for this is what you got for all your troubles of invocation. No riches, no fame, nothing. And a lot of people don't realize that throughout his lifetime, he got run out of town a few times. He was, there's a lot of places that did not want him, a lot of cities that he was not welcome. Anyway, Alan, about Aleister Crowley, everybody always thinks of, he was so notorious and he was supposed to be the most evil man, but people don't realize he didn't end up like you would think, okay. He ended up in poverty. I think he didn't have any money. His health was horrible. He had an addiction. I mean, he might have been, what they say, walked on the wild side, but didn't help him much, into old age. He was dependent, I believe, on several people to help him financially, or he would have been destitute on the street.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah, I did not know about him in poverty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do know that he lived. I did think that he did leave, a life of luxury even to the end, because there was other people that would finance him that were into the dark arts, and he was able to do that. He may not have had money to his name, and he may have gone through all of his inheritance.
Right.
From a wealthy family, but as far as him, living like a third world Cambodian refugee, I don't think that's what happened to him. But again, too, they're going to
well, you know what?
Take care of each other. For example, and again, too. Go ahead.
No, well, you know what everybody thinks of, and I know what you're saying, that, during his life, he basically, from what I understand, he either had sycophants or the women he were with, there was always somebody there that would basically bail him out, monetarily. But you would think that for all his, black magic stuff, it was like, okay, so you're going to tell me that at the end of your life, when, maybe you just need, he didn't die in luxury. He didn't die well off. He didn't die, where he had just a few people come in and, for lack of a better word, I know that sounds weird, kind of like feel sorry for him in the sense of, in other words, if it wasn't for these people stepping up and giving some money, he would have been on the streets.
Okay, you cut on out there, Marlena.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. No, but what I was saying is
you're
that.
Cutting on.
Okay, let me see.
Okay, I couldn't hear you. I couldn't hear you.
How about now? Can you hear me? Okay. Yes, you can hear me.
Yeah, it's kind of strange talking about Crowley and all that happens. I can hear you.
That's funny. Here I am bad mouthing Crowley. And hey, you know what? He didn't end up in a good place after all this black magic stuff, and we're cutting out paranormal sabotage. But but my point being that you would think somebody like him that had all this, he would have died. He would have died in the lap of luxury, very well attended to, and he didn't. And people don't realize that, especially back then when he was younger. He was there was a lot of places and cities that did not welcome him, did not want him around, because he was so notorious for the wrong reasons that he was restricted sometimes. Some cities did not welcome him at all. And he was way out there.
Right.
But and getting back to what you were saying, as far as that he picked certain places. In other words, like you said in Montauk, it wasn't like, I'll just drop a pin there. There was a reason why he used certain locations beforehand. There was a reason.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And certain areas in this world, like again too, the veil is thinning in certain areas, and that's how come we get the mojo here in Santa Fe, or also, for example, the mastermind of evil. For example, here's something that's going to be kind of interesting, and again, and this is just how bad mainstream media and CNN and the like are, is they will, or Hollywood is, and I'm just coming from a SAG-AFTRA actor, is, for example, with the awards, you got people like Meryl Streep and Salma Hayek applauding Polanski. And here's Polanski, who raped a 13-year-old, had all kinds of things have come on out about other women that he's raped and drugged.
Yes.
He claimed that he was survived the World War II horrors of a concentration camp, but he never struck me as that. And I've met some people that have. He never struck me as one of those type of people that did. Maybe he survived it because his father, whoever it was friend of the commandant or whatever it was.
Right.
But and he survived in luxury. But the point being about this is, here's Polanski, and evil guy, and he is in being protected by other people with power that have no moral compass. And also, for example, look at the movies that he's been attached to, Rosemary's Baby, and
The Knife Gate.
Also his, they say about his poor wife Sharon Tate.
Right, what a coincidence. He's in Europe at the time that the whole household gets decimated very
well. You know
brutally.
what? Sharon Tate was a Satanist, and that never ever comes on out. She ended on up doing this movie. In other words, it's Eye of the Needle, and it hardly had any release here in the USA, and it talks about sacrifice and about satanic themes, and she ended on up throwing her lot in with Luciferians. Yeah, a lot of those type of people that do that.
I'd never heard that. That's very interesting, Allan. I did not know that.
And then again, too, for example, one of the guys that's that got killed inside the mansion there with Sharon Tate. They're not lily white innocent, these people there. For example, I'm going to say his name was Freitag, but it wasn't Freitag. It was one of Polanski's pals. He was the conduit. He was the drug dealer bringing in drugs into the USA. And Jay Sebring, another guy who ended up getting knifed to death in the mansion, he was the candy man to the stars. He's the one he's the guy who came up with the Sebring haircut. And he was the one
that he was a hairdresser, right? That he was...
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you look at this, and then again, Abigail Folger with her family's connection to the MK Ultra, and then again to the couple nights later, the LoBiancas. You know that Rosemary LoBianca, and this is extraordinary. In 1969, I mean, $20, $100 was a lot of money back then. She had $6 million in her bank account. Explain that one to me.
What?
Yeah. You remember Rosemary and Leo LaBianca? They're the ones that ended up getting murdered.
Yes.
And they say it's there's copycat, whatever it was, type of murder there.
Right.
They're the ones in Los Feliz there. I mean, there's so many things linked that Satanism, drug dealing, and what is going, and it. That's how this is all came together on this as a hit. And they're trying to say, okay, it all has to do with just this evil man and Charlie Manson. No, it's much more complicated than that. And as far as LaBiancas go, with Rosemary, she's the second wife of Leo, and she was, many years younger than this guy. I don't know what, 20-some years, whatever it was. Right. We could say Leo was looking for, he was a sugar daddy, whatever. But the thing about that was she had a wig business. Okay. And how were they bringing drugs on into the USA? Smuggled in with the wigs, because wigs used to be big business back in the 1960s. And
you know what? I remember. That was the time that women would wear those hairdos up. Because I remember my mom had a wig. I remember from the 60s. That it was like that, not a bouffant, but where it was like. It was that style where you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I remember wigs were a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So all of this, is linked together, and when like you're saying about, it does not muster the test. There's more to it. And
right.
And where we're going about, we've gone from Luciferianism and the link there and what they're channeling to what we got with modern day media with Polanski and Sharon Tate.
Let me tell you something.
And there's some, again too, the Temple of Set, all these. And if you look at Hollywood now today, with what we got, you got a lot of people with no moral compass who just want to get on the bandwagon. They want to be like on the winning team.
Right.
And the more, obnoxious and liberal that they can get, the more, points they're going to get as far as being able to get this TV gig or that or movie gig, etc. on over here. And there's very few people that have gone into the, the nuts and bolts of what really happened there in '69. And let me give a plug for my tours, and I want to finish on the nuts and bolts of 1969 here of Charlie Manson. You see, on my tours, on my lectures, you will get,
See, that's what I like.
A PhD level type of stuff. If you want some information about that, and every now and then I do get a group that is up to PhD level, and they ask some fantastic questions. So my tours aren't going to be, McDonald's type of drive-in.
Right.
You're going to get the true story about this ghost or what happened here in Santa Fe here. But, with Charlie Manson there in Vacaville, for example, there where he was in prison, and I find this just to be so damn fascinating. I mean, don't believe in coincidence. There in that cell block area, Charlie Manson's the perfect guy to, be experimented on by Blackhawks, MK Ultra. In other words, getting somebody who has no family, all by himself. Nobody's going to protect him. He's been a ward of the state since age 8 or 13, etc. And program him to do this, to do that. But Charlie was too smart, and he ended up breaking his leash. And in that area. In other words, MK Ultra is going to be like somebody like Sirhan to be the
Right.
patsy. In other words, to get somebody to do something that they regularly wouldn't do.
Right.
And this is through drugs, brainwashing, etc. There, in that cell block area on that row, that's where Donald DeFreeze came from. Donald DeFreeze was an inmate there. And what happened when Donald DeFreeze came on out? He started the SLA, the Sudanese Liberation Army.
Wow.
And there has been some records released that, that the CIA was messing around with some of the prisoners there in this, that, nobody's going to protect, and they're going to become their, their little robot. You do what we tell you.
And you know that movie, The Manchurian Candidate, that when it came out, I think it was in the 60s, right?
63.
63. And it seemed like it was like more like a conspiracy fictional kind of like, thing. And it was like, now we're realizing, man, that was pretty accurate.
Right, and the thing about that, here's some some really eerie stuff about this here, and I mean, this is just how you say, creepy type of stuff. As far as I'm concerned here, but Frankenheimer's film was so good. Or I thought it's a masterpiece. The new film, forget about it. And I like Denzel. I think he's a very, very good actor. One of the best. He could break the color barrier no matter what era he was in. He's that good an actor. Denzel Washington. Mm-hmm. But when that movie came out in 63, and then after the JFK assassination, it was pulled.
Yes.
And then it was going to be re-released in 68, and then what happened? Bobby Kennedy gets it.
I was like, no.
So it finally saw the, light of day on, NBC, I'm going to say in 72 or 73 on a Saturday night movie.
Right.
But the thing about this is John Frankenheimer, who made that film, and Frankenheimer, he made some masterpieces like Grand Prix, The Manchurian Candidate, etc. here. He made... he was believed in RFK, and that RFK was going to become the next Abraham Lincoln,
right.
And he made some commercials for the RFK campaign.
Really?
And the night before, and the night of RFK's assassination there on June 5th, 1968, and I can remember this like it was yesterday. The what happened there was that RFK, after the results are coming on in, he has dinner there at Frankenheimer's mansion, and then he goes to the ambassador to to greet the people that now it's on to Illinois, on to Chicago, let's win the nomination there, because he won the California primary. And then outside, Manchurian Candidate, Sirhan, and the conspiracy, and poor RFK gets murdered. And again, too, all this hogwash that they're doing nowadays on TV about, the Ukrainian, quote, if they really want to do something, I say, where there is evidence, check into the JFK assassination, the RFK assassination. Yes. I mean, but again, the mainstream media doesn't want to do anything hard, and they want to be part of the ruling elite's government.
No, you know what? I think that for a long time, a lot of people were under the impression that if not the media, journalists, true investigative journalists, would look at the facts strictly. Fall whoever had to fall. That was it. But it doesn't seem to be that way. It seems, even now, recently, certain stories are squashed, and then others are basically massaged with kind of quasi, not good sources. And it's like, okay, so how long has this been going on? Was Walter Cronkite in on this? Was he also? Because remember, back then, what people don't realize, there was, 3 main channels or outlets that people got. So when people listened to this stuff, they took it as gospel. It was like, that's absolutely the truth. Especially if you had, let's say, like a Walter Cronkite who was so serious and had been doing this for a long time. And it makes you think, is this the way it's always been, where certain things are suppressed and others are highlighted?
Yeah, well, I think within Cronkite's case, I mean, Cronkite, I like the guy a lot. I used to just love his, him doing the moonshot type of stuff. I mean, because he was better than Mr. Science because he'd explain, okay, this is how the lunar module is going to dock with the Apollo 11 capsule. Yeah, I mean, he was great stuff. I mean, but as far as his conclusions about 63, Dallas said, well, Walter, you just don't know about ballistics. But what I really liked about him was in 68 after the Tet Offensive, since he came on TV and he was in Saigon, and his conclusion was, in essence, what the hell are we doing here in Vietnam? It's time to get on out, find an honorable peace. And I thought to myself, that's wonderful. That goes against everything that the networks want. And but as far as, I mean, nowadays they're even more in the pocket of the invisible hand, and they want globalism, and you have people with great power that are just, like Joseph Goebbels with an ego. Now you're Cubana, and there's this one Cubano who's a disgrace to the Cubanos, and I forgot his last name and he does these terrible questions to inflate his ego in the press corps. What's that guy's name?
Who's he work for?
CNN.
Oh my God, what's his? I know who you're talking about. I didn't even know he was Cuban. The guy that thinks it's all about him. Ugh.
Yeah, and then you got Soledad O'Brien. I think Soledad. The reason that your parents came on over here from Cuba was because it was bad stuff, and you want to go against the Second Amendment. You want to do this. You want to do that.
Yes.
I mean, if it's so damn great, then you go back, Soledad, and you're not going to make him $1 million. Well, maybe she would, because she's that type of person, and she would ingrate herself into the Castro regime, and she'd live like a princess. I mean, because that's the way. I mean, I just cannot stand these people who are going to say everything is bad about the USA and Fidel and the rest are wonderful.
I don't understand that, because you know what? If anything, the Cubans understand very well what it's like to live under communism. I mean, this was not like second or third hand. You experienced it firsthand, and and contrary to what a lot of people say, my family was middle class. Nobody was rich. It wasn't like everybody. Okay, and I mean, I was born here in Miami, but a lot of my family fled, and we were very lucky that in the early '60s they got out. But you hear a lot of stories, and people don't realize in those socialism/communism, which I believe the socialism is just not to scare people. They come and they take over, and they'll tell you, because they did it with my father's family. They had like a land, agriculture, and they said, all of this now belongs to the people. We will allow you to keep this house, as in not keep it. It's not yours, but we'll allow you to live here. But from now on, all these fields, this is what you will grow here. And that's it. You forfeit. The government owns everything. And they will even come and take inventory inside your house and say that, because they say this belongs to the people. And I heard a lot of stories of during the 60s, that you had to apply to get out of Cuba. They would come and they would take inventory to make sure that you had left the people's things. They would torture, basically mentally, once it became known that you were due to leave that you were going to be able to get to the United States. They called these people worms, gusanos. This is what they would call them. So what I'm saying is there's a lot of stories that are much more horrible. So it's exactly what you're saying, Allan. When you hear these people here saying socialism and blah blah and Che Guevara, it's like you guys are out of touch with reality. Truly, they are out of touch with reality.
And if these people in the late 70s, early 80s are going to get a windsurfing device and brave the sharks, brave the waves to sail to get to Miami, then that tells you, socialism, communism doesn't going to work. The only time socialism, communism works is when you have a disaster and you got to have, government coming on in to help with a hurricane, and you're going to be giving food to everybody or stuff like this, or to,
That's it. And when things are so great, why would you need to prohibit your population from leaving?
Yeah,
Let me tell you something. You want to leave right now. You want to say, hey, you know what? I think I'm going to go live in Guatemala. I think I'm going to go live in Chile and France. And, bye. See ya. Hey, I'm going to go and live as an expat in the Philippines. Bye. Nobody's ever stopping you. In Cuba, you cannot come and go as you please. You couldn't. You couldn't.
Yeah, and I think about Bernie, and Bernie. I mean, you're channeling Joe Stalin. Well, not Joe Stalin. You're who's he? I don't know who he's channeling, but in other words, because he'd be like Berea, more sneaky. Yeah, and that's, I say to myself, you know what? What you're trying to do is kill the goose that lays the golden egg here by going socialism and communism, and that's just how bad our media has become. And how we got into that, I don't know.
I know, but we're talking about Sharon Tate, Manson.
Oh yeah, okay, So there's a heck of a lot more to the story about what happened, and again, too, you have all of these roots of evil, of Luciferianism going on into the Hollywood system and secret societies, and
you know what? And maybe this is how we got started. All these things happened in the decade of the '60s. Like between 1960 to 1970. And it makes you wonder, is it now that, 50, 60 years that finally things are coming to light about what was really going on behind the scenes?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, one of the things about that is, for example, and just goes to you about Tarantino. I mean, this guy has, as a kingpin in Hollywood, and he could have made a heck of a lot better movie to really show what's going on there with the shenanigans, with what was going on in the Tate household, Polanski, the drug deals, etc. here. But he goes for the fluff, and and now with, how do you say, the internet, and they're trying to censor that. There's more and more truth coming
anyway,
on.
Allan, what you were saying about
something.
Yeah, go ahead.
About the facts, the lies, the USA propaganda.
Yeah.
For example, a lot of people will cite the Bugelow book as being gospel. That is just a fantastic novel, and about what really happened there with the Tate LaBianca murders.
Right.
And again, Bugelow was again a mouthpiece. He's kind of be like what's her name, Joy Behar.
Right.
I mean, she's sold on out. She wants to be part of make good money, live a comfortable life, so she'll give the company line. And that's the same thing that happened with Bugelow. He says, okay, I can do this, and I can make Charlie Manson the poster boy for everything evil. And then again, he tried to, with a terrible book, tried to make it later on that Oswald was a lone shooter. And again, too, it just doesn't stand on up to evidence. And for example, when Jesse Ventura got him on the, said, let me debate this to you, Bugelow would keep on saying, cut, let me not have any, we're not going to post this on TV or on video here. And mind you, Jesse Ventura, I don't agree with everything that he says, but at least he has an open mind, and he's in the same camp that I am about the conspiracies of Oswald and maybe
and that's the thing. When you said, when he wrote these books, let's say about the Manson murders, people took it at face value. I want to say Americans, all in all, were very innocent. We believed this stuff. If this person had a certain standing, an attorney, and he wrote a book, everybody thought, of course, it's the truth. In other words, people didn't think there's a reason for pushing this version out.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right, and that just occurred to me now. I mean, the gullibility of Americans. I mean, you talk about the sheeple, and again, too, I mean, I'm sure you being Cubano, you're going to feel the same way I am when Bernie praises socialism or Warren or something to this effect. I mean, it just turns my stomach.
Yes.
That's not what made this country.
No, absolutely not. It's not. It's not, like I said, and contrary to them, they have all these things, and, when you're listening there, you're like, you know what? I know so much suffering that's occurred because of what you guys are proposing, and you want to put this on on Americans. It's like, I can't believe you guys are doing that. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that's a deep betrayal. I don't care how much they want to say it's for good reasons. It's like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And you know what? This is one of those things that they talk about. The internet, the flip side of the internet, it's brought about its bad things, but the good part is that alternative information is disseminated, which I think it's the way it should be, that Americans should be allowed to make up their mind, hear all versions. I'm not into suppressing one and letting another one. Put it all out there and let the Americans make up their mind what's right or what they want to support or what they want to believe. But this thing of like, no, we're gonna squash that and this other one. That's what I have a real big problem with.
Yeah,
And
so do I.
and it's a shame. I'm seeing stuff, and I take it. It's only if you've lived a certain amount of time, you know, that you are like surprised, like Mike, let me pinch myself. Is this really going on? What is this? As far as so much. What do you want to call it? Basically they're I'm always thinking, wait, the United States has always been known as the place for free speech. It was
Right.
like, yeah, sometimes you would be very uncomfortable with what you would hear because you were totally against it, but that was what came with having a country that allowed free speech. It was like, okay, but no, some of the stuff, it's like, man, how did we get here? It's been a real
Yeah.
wake up call for a lot of people.
Yeah. That's I'm right in step with you on this. And one of the bad things about this is, again, too, with the educational system and how it
Yes.
has become a brainwashing tool
Yes.
to get people to become the sheeple. And there's this terrible book that they used to make you read in high school, and it was called 1984. But by gosh, I mean, that guy sure
Yeah. Exactly. It was one of those books like,
encapsulated what's going on with Big Brother.
yes. And it was
Yeah.
just, it was like a
And you say, so that's what's
dystopian,
going on.
like,
Do you want
that's
everybody
never going to happen kind of thing. Like, yeah, right.
Yeah, and they want everybody to not have a single individual thought and to just go along
Let me,
with globalists.
let me ask you
And
something,
no
Alan,
matter how bad it is, yeah,
especially since you're, you have so much information about Hollywood. And I'm going to say, I was kind of like late on that I'm realizing that a lot of movies that were being produced were done in such a way that they would be accepted by China to be shown in China. And I was like, what?
right.
I didn't. But at the beginning, it was like, and I remember, and I'm going to tell you what. When you mentioned Tarantino, that's why I remember a few years back, Tarantino was producing all of these Chinese, like, but ancient Chinese, like people that fly through the air when they're fighting. And I was like, how'd you go from Pulp Fiction to this? Like, what? You know? And then I didn't get it, but I was like, okay, well, maybe this is his. And now I'm hearing where all of so many movies were being made, but done a certain way so that the Chinese government would say, okay, we will allow you, we're going to allow this movie to be shown, which of course meant a lot of money for, whoever, I guess, the production company, everybody. And it was like, how did this happen? How did this happen?
Well, okay, with the greening of China and
Yeah.
with more money in the pockets there, that unfortunately, that's where our industry went to because of what the Clintons, the Bushes did with their treaties there to strip America and ship all the industry on over there. Well, now you got all these people in China that can buy movie tickets,
Yeah.
and okay, with the big brother there, they're going to say, well, we don't want you to know
Right.
that Mao was worse than Adolf or Joe Stalin, and we don't want this, we don't want that in the movie, and we're signing the checks here
Yeah.
and giving you the X amount of millions for your salary, so you do it our way.
Yes.
And these people say, yeah, okay, you know what, I've got a good life, and I'm going to go ahead and do it like you want. And that's one of the things about Red China, the Chi-Coms, what do you want to call them?
Yeah.
The People's Democratic, whatever it's called, China. Yeah, they do control and they have a big sway on
Yes.
over the industry. Now, for example, gosh, I had a small part in a TV series called Breaking Bad.
Yes.
And I remember that the story was, well, all you guys, you got to get checked on out by the Oriental faction, the Chinese here, and we'll see if you if you qualify. Okay, so it doesn't matter if I won this casting call and
Right.
I'm do this. I've got to go through this to see if these people from the mainland are going to like what they see, and go from there. So yeah,
Weren't you surprised though when you heard this as an actor, Alan? Weren't you like, huh? Who's got a what? What?
At that point, no, because I was seeing how things were going, and I thought to myself, you know what? There's still a few creative people on out there, and I like working for them.
Right.
But these other companies, I can see how it is okay, if I'm going to be doing having that kind of mindset of being, how do you say, anti-American and being a leftist, then I'm going to be in like Flynn with this group, or if I'm going to be doing drugs with them, or being a perv with them, or whatever it is,
right.
Then I'll be okay with them. But yeah, so that did not. I saw so many things going on with different films, and be it from A grade to Z grade, that was coming on out, that I thought to myself, okay, that does not surprise me. But what did surprise me was that a lot of the gatekeepers were, how to say, so incompetent. And again, too, they had gotten their jobs, and they didn't know anything about film, or say, okay, well, we got to cast this person. And if you say, well, okay, do you want me to do it like and I say, like Michael Parks did it, and then came Bronson? Do you want this, or or are we going to do a Frankenheimer type of shot with the screen test here? What? And again, too, they don't know what you're talking about, and just do it your own way. And I'm trying to get some type of, how do you say, compass reading on how you want this. This is where I thought, okay. So in other words, you can see the garbage that comes on out, and you can see, well, again, too, it leads to the gatekeepers. There's a few good gatekeepers, casting directors, but the vast majority of it is they don't know their film history, and again, too, the most creative are small-timers and people that are going to be, how to say, at either being indies or at a great distance from the Hollywood corporations. And you get some Australian companies that are doing very, very well, too, as far as creativity.
Yeah, I definitely can see what you're saying as far as indie films. That usually they would be like it would have to be extraordinarily good to get attention. I see that they're going to be the leaders because people are like, I think people have caught on to like, and I think that's why even now a lot of the movies are not doing that well. Like some of these superhero movies and supposed blockbusters don't do much because I think people are kind of caught on to what's going on.
Yeah, for example, one of the big things here is, like with Ford versus Ferrari.
Yes.
Now, I was, in the automotive tool business and racing for a long, long time, and I could, tell you about Ken Miles. I could, the true story about Holman Moody and building those engines so they last at Le Mans. I mean, the stuff that the stuff that goes on that gets green lighted for stories.
Right.
I mean, is just gobbledygook. And the good stuff, I mean, again, you got a bunch of hacks.
Well, yeah, what was it the other day? As a matter of fact, I went to see that movie, the Joker, the last one that came out with Joaquin Phoenix. Wow. Let me tell you something. That guy basically transformed himself. I was like, I hadn't seen him in the film for a long time. And it's kind of like disturbing. The movie's kind of disturbing because you always think of the Joker as he's portrayed in all these different Batman or movies. And his portrayal was like jaw-dropping. My husband left and he was like, this is really depressing. But it was like stuff like that is like you don't see that often because...
Well, I tell you what, he's channeling. I mean, Joaquin, his family,
I know,
came from a sex cult there in.
They're very unusual people. Yeah, that's to put it nicely. I didn't know it was a sex cult, though. I didn't know that.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, they're passing around kids, and Joaquin's brother and Joaquin and the rest of them were boy toys to that group, and they were. That's how come they were out of the country there in, what was it, Venezuela or was it Guyana?
Yeah.
And So what he's doing is he'll just channel that energy from, and that's not acting.
Let me tell you something. And it's really funny because the premise of the movie towards the end, and spoiler alert, anybody that hasn't seen it, at the beginning, of course, and everybody knows the premise of the movie is that you have somebody that appears to have some type of mental illness and the system, blah, 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 blah. But down as the movie goes along, you discover that in reality, there was a history of physical and sexual abuse when he was a kid.
Yeah.
That, it was like, huh? That, yeah, it was a very disturbing movie. And of
Yeah.
course, and it kind of frames, how they always have these backstories to these villains, you
Uh-huh.
know, it kind of gives it a different slant as to how he's embraced and becomes the
Yeah.
Joker, the villain. But yeah, it was like, and I was looking at the movie, it was like, whoa, man, this is dark, really dark, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, but what I'm saying is, you don't see that, like I said, a lot of the movies people just don't go see them anymore outside something like this that because they're like it's like I've seen this version of the superhero, how many times am I gonna see this, um like you were saying, it's that as far as indie films, it's like, okay, you're gonna hope that indie films are going to save the day as far as interesting original stories, not a remake from 1960 or 1970, redone a la 2000 something, because
Right.
they kind of like switch the message around or the portrayal of the characters, and it's like you're spoiling the movie. Why are you doing that? Almost like what you said when we talked about the Manchurian Candidate. I thought the original movie was great, and it's like, okay, leave that alone.
Oh, it was fantastic, and the new one, you cannot top it. And yeah, I mean, Angela Lansbury, gosh, yeah, fantastic. Uh, and you say to yourself, wow, Frank, he did. I mean, I never thought he was that good as Maggio in From Here to Eternity, but in that movie, yeah, it's fantastic. From James Gregory, or not, to gosh, everything in the direction, the panning. I mean, that is, gosh, what. Brilliant. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's that one scene of the TV interview with Brooks. That's fantastic. The blood splattering on the a picture of that. You have Mao and Stalin, and there's
Right.
just all kinds of things in that movie that are fantastic. And then you look at the modern stuff of what they're trying to do. So, well, if you had
Right.
a little bit more creativity
Yeah.
and with that kind of budget, I mean, geez, Louise, you give me that budget, give me
Okay.
1/20th of it, and I
I'm
can do better than that.
I'm gonna ask you something, and it's something that, as an actor, maybe you could tell me. I've seen some when you talk about CG. I've seen some films, that basically they're using the same technology that they do for these games, for these high end games, where they're they're so human like. The film, it almost looks like you're really looking at a real person, not a CGI. And I was like, man, is this where we're gonna head to, where we don't have actors anymore, or just their voices, in other words, and it's only gonna be a CGI construct?
Well, that's okay. And let's get to Santa Fe again and to Epstein. Epstein's Lolita Ranch was here in Santa Fe, right?
I didn't know that.
Epstein, the one that was
Yeah, 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 yeah.
murdered.
No.
You remember all the
Oh, okay,
underage
that's right, right.
women, Prince
Yes,
Andrew?
yes, of
Yeah.
course.
Okay. Well, they were all their big thing about that is to the next leap into evolution to be man merging with machine,
Right.
and you being godlike, and you
Mm-hmm.
can live forever. And with this, you're going to have this virtual reality type of existence.
Right.
You will have, there'll be, what, X amount millions of slaves but it's not going to be, 7 billion people on Earth to run their, grow their food, etc. And what was going on here with some of the meetings here in Santa Fe was about the next leap as far as where humanity's going.
Right.
seed the human race was another one of his pipe
Yeah, I
dreams.
heard that.
And of course, he was involved with. Yeah. Okay. Well, this is going back to what you're talking about, green screen and
Right.
non-reality type of stuff of us. Yeah. So yeah, that's the next step into technology of what you're going to be seeing. And as far as, are you going to be able to fake out the people and saying that this is reality when it's not, when it's just special effects, be it from TV or seeing something in the sky, or yeah, there's all kinds of things that can be done. And again, too, it's all part of that.
Yeah, that deep fake,
Big
what they
Brother.
call deep fakes.
What's that?
That's what they call those deep fakes. The one, well, they, when
Yeah.
they use that, they have actors,
Yeah.
like let's say Star Wars, where they'll make them younger. They'll do like a flashback, and then and
Right.
that's fine, that's great. But now that they call deep fakes, like how far does this deep fake go? Where, all of a sudden, you could make somebody appear to be. I mean, the possibilities are endless and sometimes scary when you think about it. But
Yeah, and look at what we're able to do, like in the 1930s with pictures from the Kremlin with the Politburo, different people being snipped on out, or from 1920s pictures of Trotsky being snipped on out, and it's just Lenin and Stalin, or
Right.
snipping out Beria. Yeah, that's the thing about this, is about singularity and about the next thing. And Epstein was just the tip of the iceberg,
yes.
and he had to be silenced. But again,
yes.
getting back to Santa Fe and all these weird things again, too, here, give it a few more years to say, wow, this is almost, as mind-shattering about a new type of, life forms, cyborg, of what they're trying to do
Yes.
with what they're discussing here at the Lolita Ranch outside of Santa Fe here in Santa Fe County.
Right. That you would always have at your disposal a young, healthy body, but your consciousness would always be the same, your self-awareness. And they basically, like the idea of these people that supposedly had themselves frozen, well, don't worry about it. We'll keep your awareness, your brain, whatever. If we could put let's say your brain, your memories, who you are in a chip, and all we have to do is insert it into either a totally biomechanical body, or totally mechanical transhumanism. Yeah, it's kind of scary when you think about it. And of course, absolutely, that the only ones that were going to have that type of privilege would be elites. If you were...
Yeah. Yeah, and if you look at, you talked about transhumanism on over here, and about what little we do know about history before the Egyptians, etc., before the Babylonians. Remember the chimeras or the chimeras, and again too about you have the body of the lion, the head of a man, the wings. You've got Anubis, human form with the jackal's head, or etc. And if you look at some of those tablets or some of those paintings, it looks like is that a leash, or is that stitch marks? I mean, of where you've got this and that attached to this animal, and that's what they're doing. And again, to going back to Camp Hero out there in Montauk, we know what is across the strait at from old Camp Hero.
Right.
You know what's there, Marlena?
What?
Plum Island.
Plum Island. I was about to say Plum Island.
Yes. And tell the audience about Plum Island, about what goes on there. And again, too, this has to with what are they channeling? What demonic energy? What evil things are they channeling? Giving us this kind of technology, and that's what's going on at Plum Island. Go ahead and tell the audience about Plum Island.
Well, as a matter of fact, you remember in Silence of the Lambs when Hannibal Lecter, they're trying to bribe him into cooperating. And she's telling him, we will allow you to go to this island and you will have free run of the place. And what are the odds? It was either Plum Island or one that was adjacent to it. And he said thanks, but no thanks.
I missed that one.
Yes.
Okay, because I got so angry at that movie because they just didn't. I thought it was really overrated. But anyway, but Plum Island, ladies and gentlemen, that is a top secret
Yes.
government base, and that's where they're doing all kinds of, how do you say, mutations with animals.
Yes,
And
and you can't go on
in
there.
other
It's
words,
like
you know,
you cannot go there. That place is like fenced off. It's nobody's allowed there. What was
yeah,
it?
and it's
Animal
patrolled by
diseases and stuff like that. That's what they were studying
yeah,
supposedly.
and it's yeah, and it's patrolled by Coast Guard, naval fast boats with weaponry, and it's fenced off. So you're doing all kinds of stuff, and every now and then something washes on up, and you say, "What is this?" And they'll find that on
Right.
Long Island. And it's like a combination type of animal. And again, too, what were we talking about there? With the opening of the doorway by accident with the Philadelphia experiment that was transferred to Camp Hero. Then across you have the Plum Island. It's still top secret area at Plum Island.
Right.
And then
It's
again
owned
with,
by the United States. There's no private ownership of anything
right,
on there. Yeah.
and then you have in that mansion there, Camp Hero will no longer exist, is where Crowley was opening on up that dimensional doorway. And what was he channeling? Lamb, this, yeah. So you see what you're talking about. The elite, and this goes into, you know, aspects of the Illuminati and other types of ruling families. Just exactly what have they been able to tap on into, and why do they have control centuries after centuries? And how come they keep on, I say, their iron hand keeps on closing and closing in trying to control us more so. And now there's the big fight with the freedom of people saying, hey, there's something going on here that is not right, and we do not want these politicians from generations to be part of the ruling class anymore. And again, it goes back to Santa Fe. I mean, of all the places, we talked about all the ghostly activity, A-bomb secrets being stolen here in Santa Fe, all the strange sacred geometry of the area, and then we got Epstein and the Lolita Ranch on over here, and all these
I didn't know it
people
was that
coming
close
on
to
over
Santa
here.
Fe. I knew that ranch was out there. As a matter of fact, I heard, from what I understand, that, you know, since when he lived out there, you know, he was a registered sex offender because of what he happened here in Florida. But since he was saying, I live, you know, that the law is you have to register where you live. So even though he was out there, he would say, I live in the Virgin Islands. So in other words, that's why he was not forced to register locally there as an offender, because supposedly, technically, he didn't live there. So that's how he got around that one.
Well, yeah, there's some truth to that, and there's also something else, inside connection there. But yeah, one of the things about, like, for example, with the film business here, is they'll say, well, okay, you know, you're getting a tax break, and we want some New Mexicans on the film set here. But then you got people from New York or California who have a P.O. box here and say, well, I'm a New Mexico resident. And of course, they know that they're not the higher on-ups, but you've gone through that loop there, and we can hire you, and it's the old buddy network. But as far as Epstein there, with his connections with ex-President Clinton, and Hillary, who's going to be running for president again, you know, she can pull the chain, be it with, you know, the constabulary. And then, of course, he was friends with Bill Richardson, the governor of New Mexico. All these powerful people on over here, he's going to be able to, you know, get away with not being registered as a sex offender here. So yeah, I mean, so there's.
I mean, tell you something, but again, I'm going to come back to, I'm going to say, considering everything with the internet, I think a lot of this would have remained unknown if it wasn't for the internet, as far as disseminating information.
Exactly, and that's what's very dangerous about what they're trying to do, is trying to censor this and say, okay, you know what, that's going to upset somebody, that's hate speech. Hey, no, this is facts.
No, right, no. And it's like, wait, we've been doing this for the last quite a few decades. We want it to continue, and it's slipping from our control.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's you know, that everybody was, you know, everybody was hypnotized, like, oh, okay. You know, okay, well, that person said it, and they're an expert, or they're, you know, they've got a rank, or, you know, and everybody just followed along because we didn't know any better. And it turned out, and a lot of people now are waking up going, huh? What? They what? It's like, yeah, I think there's a lot of Americans having rude awakenings, maybe in the last 5 years, especially.
Yeah.
That kind of like, yeah, an unpleasant awakening anyway. But anyway, Allan, I want to I could keep talking to you forever. I want to thank you so much. You have been such a wonderful, wonderful guest, and I hope you're going to come back because I think we could talk about a lot of other things. And it's just been great.
It's been wonderful, likewise, and we were all over the map. I really
Yes.
enjoyed it,
Yes.
and that's what makes this program so sweet and so good. And yeah, I wish you a wonderful holiday,
Likewise.
and all the people listening on out there, drive safe. And I just want to say one thing, before we go here,
Sure.
to those people that are experiencing. Alcoholism, drug addiction for the holidays, etc. Get help, be it AA or wherever you got to
Yes.
go. Get help. Don't do anything stupid.
Yes.
Your life is too precious. You got too much more to do in this world and to help other people.
Yes.
And just get help. And there's always going to be a tomorrow. And just do the right thing and go and get help.
Yes.
And with that, everybody have a wonderful holiday. And I guess I'll talk to you again come next year. So have a wonderful end of 2019. And lastly, I want to say a few things to you off of the air.
Sure.
When we so stay on the line and I'll talk
Okay.
to you afterwards.
All right,
Okay.
hold on. Okay, guys, I'm gonna bug out for just a second. I'm back. Okay, yeah, it's that I needed to talk to. Well, like sometimes people want to talk about certain things, and I understand. That we wanted to talk privately because not everything is meant to be on air. I love talking to Allan. I could probably do a 24-hour Allan Pacheco interview marathon. But yeah, as you can tell, he is well-rounded. I'm telling you, I've looked at his website as far as his tours. He's been doing it like 30 or 35 years, a really long time. And you could tell the testimonials, the pictures that people send him. You could tell that people love his tours, and he's got great feedback. So check out his website, which, by the way, I will have a link to it on the credits of the show, and I'm sure if people that are listening to the podcast, you heard him mention what it is, and also if his email, if you've got anything along what he's looking for. And I mean, we went all over the map, but that's why I like talking to him, because so many interesting stuff, so many things out there. And like I said, sometimes, and God knows, that's one of the things I do sometimes when I go traveling. I take these different tours, whether history tours or ghost tours. And I've gone on some that they were okay, and even the presenter was okay, but it was like, I've heard this information. You pulled this off Google, right? And it's like, it's okay, but you know what? What I like when I go on tours is like, you're gonna give me what I don't see on Google. You're gonna give me this behind the scene, the backstory to the backstory about what happened here. Like, this place is supposed to be haunted by this lady, whatever. So supposedly blah, blah, blah. But the real story is, that's what I like. And that's what Allan gives, because, of course, when you live in a certain place for that length of time, especially if you've been doing tours, you get the real story. And I don't know if a lot of, some of you might see a lot of the different paranormal reality shows. And a lot of them, originally, one of the ones that was doing it from the beginning was the Dead Files, where, she would go out there, do the psychic part, but Steve DeShavi would be going off and do the research. And of course, he would contact genealogists and newspaper archives and historians, and he would put together this picture. And lately, a lot of these shows are starting to do that, because they realize that people are really interested in, is this like an urban myth, or this place that's supposedly haunted, is it really accurate, or it's not, or is there more to it? Which, by the way, I found. That's why I wrote one of my books, which is The Lady in the Blue Kimono, which was a bunch of, they're all true, they're all accurate stories of all these really disturbing murders that happened. Some of them never solved. And I came across them because I was doing research and other stuff. Okay? And I think that, again, coming back to what we were talking about, the tours with Allan, is that I personally like it, and I think most people like it, when you go on one of these tours, whether it's historical or ghost, and you're getting all this rich detail facts, or that he tells you, you know what, the story on this is this, but in reality the truth is that. Like what we were talking about La Llorona, I had no idea that the true origin of La Llorona was out of Santa Fe. I mean, I knew it was in the Southwest, but I never knew that it was the origins were out of Santa Fe. And I mean, there's different versions of it, and as far as whether some put it that she killed her children purposely by accident, out of jealousy. I mean, there's just a little bit different versions here and there, and or that she's seen, she steals children. She's a harbinger, like kind of like a banshee. Like when you see her, you're gonna die. I mean, there's different things, but I didn't know the historical part tied into Santa Fe. But I mean, we talked about so many interesting things that, guys, I really hoped you enjoyed the show because I absolutely loved it. I have a lot of interesting guests that I've got scheduled. I don't interview during December, but I mean, I'm going to be releasing shows, but I don't because, like I said, myself and a lot of my guests, we're caught up with doing family stuff, holiday stuff, which, by the way, I think is the way it should be. And also, by the time this airs, I should have released it already. I'm putting out a follow-up to the book, the Sybil Chronicles, which is Walker Between the Worlds. I'm doing a shorter version called a novella. It's called Diabolique. It's I'm scheduling it for release on November 29th, 2019. So please look for it. I'm going to have it here on my website and on Amazon. And I'm going to be doing some giveaways also on that book once I release it. And I'll let you guys know, like I said, follow me on social media. That's usually where I post a lot of stuff, or sign up for my newsletter. And as a matter of fact, right now, which by the time you hear this, it will be over, I have a giveaway of an apron for DC Comics The Flash. Because I thought, you know what? This is exactly what everybody needs with all the holiday cooking, an apron. Yeah. So again, guys, thank you for being part of my audience. You are all absolutely wonderful. And again, for those of you who will listen to this a little bit behind the times, happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Holidays. Wishing you and yours the best. Take care.